Most players obsess over strategy mistakes and technical leaks. They spend hours going over solvers, reviewing hand histories, and tweaking their ranges. But the biggest leak in poker, it's not found in your database. The biggest leak is caused by fear. And until you spot it, it will quietly control your decisions. Fear is different from a technical mistake. You won't spot it in your hand histories. It doesn't just jump out and say, fold here or call this bet. Instead, it hides in plain sight, disguised as logic, as caution, as being disciplined. It whispers, play it safe, don't risk it, wait for a better spot. And before you realize it, you're no longer competing against your opponents, you're competing against your imagination of what could go wrong. That's what makes fear so dangerous. Instead of making clear, confident decisions, you start to hesitate. You become self-protective. And the very thing fear promises you, safety, is the exact thing that stops you from playing your best poker. Now, when most players think of fear, they think of something extreme. Sweaty palms, heart racing, that big all-in that could define your tournament. But fear usually shows up in much more subtler ways. Here are some of the most common ones. The first is fear of losing. You sit down to play, already tense, convinced that this needs to be a winning session. Every pot feels heavier than it should. Then there's fear of judgments. You obsess over how other people see you. And deep down, you're afraid that you could be exposed as not being good enough. Then there's a fear of mistakes. You set yourself impossibly high standards so that any misstep feels like a failure. Then there's the fear of wasted effort. You dread putting years of work into something and having nothing to show for it at the end. Then there's the fear of expectations. You don't just carry around your own goals, you also carry around what other people expect of you. On the surface, these fears all look different, but at their core, they're all the same. Fear of failure. And failure feels like losing your identity as a poker player, like proving that voice in your head right. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this. So fear does its job. It convinces you to protect yourself and to not go all out. One of the cleverest ways fear gets around our detection is by wearing the mask of perfectionism. On the surface, perfectionism looks like a strength. You work hard, you set high standards, you want to push yourself and get the most out of yourself. To outsiders, you look motivated and disciplined. But perfectionism isn't driven by trust, it's driven by fear. Perfectionism whispers, if you prepare enough, if you study enough, if you work hard enough, maybe you'll be good enough so that you don't fail. The problem is, poker doesn't work like that. You can't avoid mistakes. You can't control variance. You can't play perfectly. And when you chase perfection, you don't become fearless, you become fragile. The moment variance strikes, or you make a mistake, your confidence shatters. If you've ever thought, I can't afford to mess this up, or I've got to prove myself today, that's perfectionism at work. Fear wearing a convincing mask. Now I want to share with you what I call the 7 masks of perfection. Have a listen to them and see which ones relate most to you. Mask number 1, I work hard. You put in endless hours of studying and volume, but underneath there's a fear that it might not be enough. Mask number 2, I have high standards. You push yourself relentlessly, but when you fall short, you judge yourself very harshly. Mask number 3, I love to learn. You devour content and coaching, but you hesitate to trust yourself in game when mistakes are possible. Mask number 4, I like to be motivated. You fire yourself up, but motivation soon turns to tightness when every hand feels like a test. Mask number 5, I love to win. Winning feels incredible, but when you over-identify with results, losing feels crippling. Mask number 6, I won't let people down. You carry other people's expectations on your shoulders, and every hand feels like proof of your worth. And mask number 7, I expect to play awesome. You demand nothing less than peak performance, so anything else feels like a failure. Now, do you recognize yourself in any of these masks? The trick with perfectionism is it feels like discipline. It feels like ambition. But underneath the surface isn't confidence, it's fear. The perfectionist isn't aiming high because they trust themselves, they're aiming high because they're afraid of falling short. And that's the trap. Chasing perfectionism doesn't make you fearless, it makes you fragile. So here's a reflection exercise for you today. Take 5 minutes to ask yourself these 3 questions. What fear shows up most often in your game? What perfectionist mask do you notice in yourself? And how do these fears or masks shape your decisions at the tables? Because the truth is, you can't overcome what you can't see. Awareness is always the first step. Fear is poker's invisible opponent. It hides behind logic, patience, and perfectionism. It feeds on impossible standards and unrealistic expectations. But awareness changes everything. The moment you spot the fear, whether it's fear of losing, fear of making mistakes, or one of the 7 perfectionist masks, you take back control. This is the foundation of playing fearlessly, learning to see fear for what it really is. Now, this is just part 1. In part 2, coming later this week, we'll go even deeper. I'll show you how to rewire the beliefs that fuel fear, shift the expectations that keep you trapped, and use a simple tool to retrain yourself to play fearlessly at the tables. So make sure you subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.